Okay.
Welcome everyone. Those who attended the session between 3 and 4 p.m. I hope you found it informative and you have a bunch of questions. We will be asking the questions that we have, and we will take your questions also. The other focuses for today is we'll be announcing some of the upcoming events that you should be looking out for. We have Miriam who will be covering some of the news sections that is happening in the globally and nationally, and we'll have open discussions to that. And focus of today is waivers and authorizations. We have our two favorite Irishmen back again, John Miam and Michael O'Shea. I think they'll be more relaxed now after the last session. This will be a more informal session and stuff. So we are going to have discussions on various topics. Some of the topics we cannot stress too much in depth because of the regulations and stuff. So we just will cover and highlight if there's any information on those topics. If you have questions, please post it on the chat. And if you would like to ask it directly, just send the message saying that I would like to ask a question, or I think raise your hand option is there. So it's a roughly 2-hour session, and I hope Mike and John will be there for the whole session. If they have to leave, we understand, but we have rest of the team. So for those who are new to this, Let's Talk Drones is an informal chat room where we talk about drones, everything about drones, and we bring in experts that will make sure that the information we have is right, or give us more information on those topics. And the AUVSI North Carolina, we are a nonprofit. We are here to bridge the gap between organizations and agencies, and help them, assist them with unmanned safety education and outreach. So our team, you have Riley Beeman, the vice president, and public safety expert. So he's there today on the chat also. We have Nicole, who is our secretary, and she will be handling the technical side. And we have Bill Lewis. We have Paul Rossi. He may be already in, or he'll be joining in. Then we have Justine Hollinghead from, and we have Ashley Felton and Zia Durrani. That's our team right now. And we do have 2 interns also who are helping out. They may be calling in. So that's our team, small team. And our main job is education, promoting education and outreach. So with that, let me just open the floor with some events coming up. I know David is right here, and David's event is coming up next week. David, would you like to talk a few minutes about your event?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Darshan. Actually, Mike is participating. He participated in a recording actually earlier today for us for the event coming up. So we are a relatively new organization, just like AUVSI North Carolina. We're about 1.5 years old.
David, I think you'll have to speak a little louder. Maybe that's. Or come closer to the mic.
Am I better?
Is that better for everyone? Yeah.
Yeah. Where we got founded on 2 folds, one being advocacy and the other being education, just like yours. Really kind of taking essentially what you guys are doing and really trying to elevate Pennsylvania into really the next level, and taking what other states like North Carolina or Utah or North Dakota have done and really allow Pennsylvania to become a leader rather than a follower. And in doing so, we wanted to create our virtual event, which is coming up next week, next Tuesday through Thursday. We're actually having a flash sale right now for $99 for it. And you guys can use the discount code MEMBER50. MEMBER50 will get you an additional $50 off. We're really using it as a mechanism to help promote and fund the association, help move things forward. We have 63 speakers, 18 panels / roundtable sessions, 20 sponsors, And we've actually extended free registration to our entire General Assembly. So all 253 members of the General Assembly here in Pennsylvania have been extended a free invitation so that they can hear from the experts. It's really great whenever we have all the experts together, just like right now, where we're talking about all the different issues and things that encompass the drone industry. And we wanted to make sure that we were able to connect the experts to our key decision makers within Pennsylvania. That being our General Assembly, our Department of Transportation, our Office of Emergency, our Emergency Management Agency, and really make sure that they know what steps states need to really take in order to become successful, encompassing and making sure that they're making the right decisions whenever it comes to safe and integrated operations of UAS throughout the state. If you guys aren't aware, there are a lot of great Pennsylvania companies that are doing great things in the industry, like ASTM International is a Pennsylvania-based company, OneSky, Navmar Applied Sciences, Near Earth Autonomy. We have a lot of great companies here, and we're just trying to make sure that we have a great vehicle for them to do so and a great platform for them to educate out. So I invite you all to check out our event site. I'll post it in the comments, a link to it, and we invite you all to attend. If you can't make it there, just registering will give you access to all 18 of the sessions because they are all pre-recorded sessions. We will have live Q&A there, but hopefully as many of you can join. We're just trying to get as many registrations as possible.
That's good information, David. And if you can just post it on the chat, the link to it. And as David mentioned, states many states are catching up with their program and overall state integration. So Pennsylvania is driving towards becoming a leader, and this event is going to highlight the education part of it. So do check out this event, and a lot of good information. And now you have the benefit of staying at home and getting all this education through virtual sessions. So don't miss this event. Thank you, David. The other event that is also announced that AUVSI North Carolina is partnered with is the AZ Drone Fest and Education Expo. That's in October 22nd to 24th. That event is also available, is online. It's the azdronefest.com, and they have their early bird price up till October 8th. This is going to be for recreational, commercial, public safety, everyone. It's going to have 3 days of education followed by a drone festival. So if you haven't been to a drone festival and you haven't seen how drones are used in cinematography, this is a great event to be a part of. So it's AZ Drone Fest. The link will be posted on the chat, so do visit that. And remember, it's October 8th. That's the early bird prizes. So two of the events that we are partnering with, and we are trying to basically go beyond our borders. We are trying to work with other states also, and that's how education is pushed. So with that, I'll bring Miriam on, and Miriam, please give a few information about Drone Life and what we are, where the industry is, and basically how some of the new stuff and all that we can cover, and where, especially in waivers and authorization, I'd like you to ask a bunch of questions out first to John and Mike.
Okay. So I'm Miriam McNabb. I'm the editor-in-chief at Drone Life. If you haven't subscribed, please do. We put out new content every weekday about the commercial drone industry specifically, and that includes waivers and authorizations and FAA regulations and anything I can find that I can understand well enough to write about, and some things I don't understand at all but write about anyway. So that is Drone Life. Usually what we do here is we cover some of the main stories of the month that have taken place the last month, and kind of throw that out to get the conversation started. Certainly, two of the big stories this month were drone delivery, with Amazon getting a Part 135 and a couple of new new Walmart trials and so forth. So I think that would be an interesting one maybe for our guests to cover, is the waivers required for drone delivery and the difference between a Part 135 versus somebody doing drone delivery without a Part 135. Another thing that was up for this month was Commercial UAV Expo. A virtual event happened, and they had a lot of great speakers, including Eric Ammond from the FAA, who talked about what's next for the IPP. And I know that our guests did touch on that briefly in the last section about kind of what's next for the IPP as some of those projects wind down. But I think that a lot of people, certainly in the Drone Life audience and maybe the audience here, are curious about kind of what new projects they might be able to be involved in their state. And Darshan, you wrote a great piece for us on drone delivery in North Carolina, so that might be something that you could address too. I do get a lot of emails about that. How can I become involved in some of those groundbreaking projects that are happening in my state? So is that good enough to get started, or do you want to
That's good. John and Mike, you would want to start out with the discussion?
Yeah, thanks, Miriam. Thanks, Darshan. It's 4:20 on a Friday. Yeah, thanks a lot. You know where I'd rather be right now?
This should absolutely be like virtual cocktail hour,
yeah,
man. We should,
exactly.
Darshan, you should mix something up in your little shaker beforehand. And
Exactly. Well, such easy topics to discuss to the press. Oh, yeah.
I already wrote down everything you said in the last session, and that one's already been published. So
all right.
you're free. I can't type and
well,
talk
it looks
at the same time.
It looks like Mike and I can fulfill our dreams of opening a bar because our employment at the FAA is about to terminate. Then thanks a lot. I'll touch on really the Part 135 part of it, and I'll let Mike talk more about beyond what's next after the IPP. But I don't know a whole lot, but I do know some about it. And in general, these are going to be, as I understand it, these are 135 operations. And for those of you who don't know what 135, these are on-demand charter operations. So think about, if you know what NetJets or UPS, these are unscheduled charter operations, and they have a higher standard of flight rules to comply with. And the difference between delivering a package under 107 and delivering a package under 135 is really two things. If you want to go beyond visual line of sight, that pushes you into 135. If you want to go across state lines, that pushes you into 135. You can deliver goods interstate, I think that's the right word, right? Inside a state, and not get a DOT and all these other, there's all kinds of rules that apply if you cross state lines. So if you want to deliver a package from my house to my neighbor across the street and charge him $5, I could do that under Part 107 because I could keep that within visual line of sight, and it's not crossing state lines. But once I go beyond visual line of sight, once I cross a state line, and obviously large companies like UPS, Google Wing, and Amazon, they all, they must see great commercial opportunities. I can't speak for them, but I would think that's why they're doing it, right? And again, I talk in terms of the Holy Grail, right? What is the Holy Grail for the UAS industry? It's going beyond visual line of sight for long distances, right? That's the Holy Grail, because at that point, if the economies of scale really start making a business case very interesting. But there's a lot of challenges with that. And the challenges really are technology today. And under one of the big things I guess I would like the audience today to know, or the people you write for, is that one of the number of organizations or entrepreneurs that are starting to reach out to the FAA is growing like everything else in drones, right? It's starting to grow exponentially. But I call it the buzzkill, right? What's the buzzkill? The buzzkill is you have to have a type certificated drone before you can start or finish your Part 135 application. So we're not going to really start the process for John Meehan's cargo delivery company unless John Meehan submits a type certificated drone as part of his package. Now, okay, so then that leads you to, okay, that's great. So how do I get one, right? I want to get one. Well, there's, I think, a couple of dozen, as I understand it, there's at least, I don't know the exact number, but it's more than you can count on two hands, companies that are going through the type certification process for drones and some of those will be for a variety of different purposes. Some of them will be for agricultural aircraft operations. Some of them will be for cargo delivery. So I don't know. They're all over the map, what they want to do. But if John Meehan wanted to start a Part 135 cargo delivery company, I would have to get a special operating certificate to do that. And that's done under 14 Code of Federal Regulations, Part 135. And I would just follow all those, and I'd have to comply with all of that and request exemptions for those that I can't comply with. I think there's one in some of them, you have to have seatbelts. Well, you're not going to have seatbelts, right? So you have to request an exemption for that. So it's a laborious process, but it is a process. Now, there were two early on, I think it was Wing and UPS, and you probably know better than me, but I think they were early on and they had restricted type certificates, right? So, and they were really limited as to what they would do. And a big part of that was for the FAA to really start the learning process. And what we do today is we centralize the Part 135 certificate application process is centralized today, but the intent is that as this matures and as we learn about the process, as we learn how to do this better, we're going to do what we've always done with Part 135 in general, which was farm it out to the FSDOs. Eventually the FSDOs will be doing that locally and managing those certificates at those district offices. So that's a very long-winded answer for you. I don't know if I helped you or answered the question, but I'm not intimately familiar with those particular certificates, so I can't really comment intelligently on that. And Mike would argue I can't comment intelligently about anything, but
and the type certification regulation was just published, right? That's recently published.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's a big deal, because and by the way, Darshan, we didn't really get to this because we were going so well. But one of the things I wanted to point out to the public safety folks is that as these type certificated machines become available, and I think you'll start seeing that. And this is something for the industry really to think about, actually beyond public safety. But as type certificated drones become available, those companies and organizations, in John's personal opinion, ought to really think hard about the machines they have today versus using machines that are type certificated. And particularly government entities who, let's just say, have deep pockets and people might want to sue them. You might want to switch out your consumer grade drone for a type certificated machine as a defensive measure, if nothing else, but that's up to you. But that's something, I think that, as terms of a topic to write about, could be a very interesting topic, right? What's the impact on the industry going to be when type certificated drones start hitting the marketplace? Because I think you're going to see a shift, and this is my personal opinion, this is not the FAA, I want to be very clear about that, but I think you're going to see a shift in the types of products that companies, private companies, public entities, the types of products that they're going to use, because those will have defined maintenance programs. Those will have defined manufacturing processes. So it's a big deal, right? It's a much more sophisticated, much more robust. You can't just go put you can't 3D print a blade in my printer downstairs and go put it on. It has to be one that meets spec, right? So it's a big deal. So I think that's going to be a very good game changer for the industry and raise the safety level up to where it needs to be. But that's my personal opinion. I don't know if I help you.
I think you're absolutely right. And it's actually a fascinating topic, as you point out. You know, when you think about the automotive industry, when the automotive industry first started, at one point there were something like 800 auto manufacturers in the United States. And as standardization comes, that number shrank considerably, and the market really shifted. So very interesting.
Well, and
Thank
remember
you.
the red flag? Do you remember the red flag laws?
Absolutely.
Right?
4 miles an hour. And you had to have some guy waving a red flag.
Yeah, I think we're kind of in the same way with the drones, you know, and everybody's mad at the FAA. Well, how come you're not letting us go do this? I said, well, the technology isn't there yet. You know, it's
right. Right. And I looked it up. There were 60 years between the time the first car went and the first Department of Motor Vehicles was established. So it takes time for the regulatory, infrastructure to grow. So
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, great. So I think I'm going to pass the baton to Mike for the second part of your question.
John, I'm going to interject real quick. We had a question at the bottom. So the question is, and I'm going to rephrase it, I think, does 135 is, if I keep it in line of sight and want to cross state lines, does that preclude 135, or does 135 kick in?
It's either or. If you're going to cross state lines, 135. If you're going to go beyond visual line of sight, 135. If you're going to go beyond visual line of sight and cross state lines, 135. That's the way I understand it.
So if I do line of sight but cross the state line, that's still 135.
Yeah, once you cross state line, you're moving into interstate commerce, which is a whole different.
All right, I think
Bill. Same Jay Cohen has put his hand up, so I think he wants to continue on that question.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. You're on mute. Let me unmute you 1 minute. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, everybody. It's good to see you again, by the way. Hey, Miriam, keep up the great work. John, I'm going to rephrase that. It's hard. It's hard listening and asking questions at the same time. With this intertrade commerce, and can we take that drone on the road, cross state lines, and deliver goods within that state? That's really what I was trying to get across.
Boy, I have no idea. I think I would say that.
Do this.
I would say that I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah, that potentially wants to do this, John, and I'm not sure of the regulation.
I would think, and I'm not a lawyer, so this is just my opinion, but I would think that under 107, you can operate anywhere in the National Airspace System in Class G. So why not? If you're in New York State and you move and you go to Boston, well, now let's say you go to New Hampshire, less airspace, right? And you operate inside New Hampshire, I would say, yeah, you could probably do that under 107.
107, correct. Right.
If you're going to fly that package from Vermont to New York, then no, 135.
Right. That I get. Okay. So nothing that you know of would stop this gentleman under 107, as long as he's crossed the state line, can fly that drone.
As long as he doesn't cross a state line in that flight.
In the air, right. Exactly. Yeah. But he can cross it by boat, or he can cross it by truck and then launch it within that state, as long as he's flying line of sight.
Yeah, because it's a national airspace system, right. And you're now what if you want to get a dissertation about interstate commerce, then you probably got to talk to the Commerce Department.
And if I could add You could definitely do that under 107, but remember, you can't be over people. You can't be over moving vehicles. Like there's lots of restrictions. So
Yeah, you still have to fully comply with 107.
No doubt.
And I would point you to Drone Up did a project, and I believe that they collaborated with the FAA on this, and they did a sort of experimental project to see what was possible within the confines of Part 107. We wrote an article about it. If you search, I think it's called like Last Mile something, but and it links to the actual white paper. But I'd refer you to that white paper too.
I think Virginia Tech is
talks
doing
about
that
some
with
of the
Google
issues.
Wing, right? Right? Aren't
I
they doing
believe
that down
so.
in Blacksburg?
Yep. Yep. So there have been a couple of things designed to kind of see what's possible, both from technology and regulation standpoint.
Yeah, and I think it was Paul raised a great point, right? Which is always it's a good opening for me to come back and say, you still have to comply with 107. So just because you're going to fly a package doesn't mean, now I can go beyond visual line of sight. No, you got to get a waiver for that. You got to you got to fly in good weather. The regs still apply. So that was a great point, Paul.
So those operations, I think something happened, but like those 135 operations, you don't need the waiver to fly over people because your aircraft that you're operating is proven, type certified, right? It's proven that it's a reliable craft.
If that aircraft has been approved for ops over people.
Approved. So like UPS, the net jets, when they get in that 135 to do that 135 up, they're operating in an aircraft that has an inspection every 100 hours. It gets an inspection annually.
It's a very robust program.
It has redundancy in its systems.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where this drone deliveries, in order to go beyond visual line of sight, operate in that environment, in neighborhoods, in communities, the systems have to be there. And safety.
And I'm going to take advantage of this opportunity you gave me to inject. Also, when I talk to public safety or any of those, I always suggest they have a conversation with their legal and risk management people. That they always seem to forget to ask the risk management people, how do you feel about me doing this? And it's like, guys, you need to talk to them. Because they're the ones who are going to have to pony up if you hit the bus driven by the nun full of orphans and it crashes into the nuclear power plant. Then the FAA is your least of your troubles, right?
So I think, Mike, let me bring you into this conversation on the drone delivery side, but on the public safety element. How do you see, or what does the path forward? Already anything ready for them to get involved in it?
So there's a lot of questions you just asked me there, and some that I can answer and some that I can't. But
John spoke a lot, so I'm trying to push it on you now.
Yeah, exactly.
I was kind of trying to see how long he could go before I actually had to say anything. I was
I
thinking
I did that to keep him out.
Get to 5 o'clock somewhere time, then I could be out of here. And just to comment on a couple of things, the question the gentleman had about operating a drone in multiple states, but conducting the operation in that state. Sometimes people forget that our parent organization is the Department of Transportation. So interstate commerce is something that they deal with in terms of transportation. So I would caution you just that we have our general counsel, their emails are available online. Sometimes it takes a while to get a response back because they're really busy, but I would email them that question because that's a good one because I'm not really sure what the answer is. I'm not a lawyer. I didn't sleep in a Holiday Inn last night. Hardly slept at all. No, I'm just kidding. I would definitely ask the question before you got full blown into that or start selling that as a business. Make sure you're within the regulations and guidelines. I think you probably are. I agree with John, but I'm one of those people who kind of like, it's kind of one of those I'm not really sure about, so I would check. And on the Part 135 operations, the only comment I would have about that is when they go to Part 135, the aircraft gets type certificated. It also gets a production certificate as well. And what's really hard for unmanned aircraft systems or drones is when we take a 777 and we take it to do a type certification on it, and a production certification on it, they freeze that configuration. So in other words, they hand that airplane off to the FAA and says, it's yours. And sometimes it takes 2 or 3 years to come back with that type certificate. But that's hard to do with drones. I mean, with drones, you know, the technology changes daily. I think I spend half my life updating the software on my drones before I go fly each time, just to make sure that it's up to date and it hasn't changed. Or they don't make my drone anymore. I still love my DJI Spark. They don't make it anymore, and I'm not planning on buying the Mavic Mini because I like my Spark, and I'm not going to change it. Then eventually they're probably going to take it out if they won't do software updates or stuff. But things change a lot within industry, and sometimes faster than the FAA can certify something. And you just saw, we just recently released information how we're doing a more streamlined process for doing certification for main aircraft systems. Internally, we call it DNR, which coming from public safety is sort of an unfortunate term. It doesn't stand for do not resuscitate. It stands for durability and reliability testing. And we're basically looking at, you know, how do we take that drone and quickly come back and with some kind of assumption of safety? You know, can we assume that it's safe to fly over, you know, rural areas and occasionally over somebody, or is it safe to fly over downtown New York City? And the requirements for meeting those are satisfactorily meet those requirements obviously is a lot different from operating in Western Kansas to operating in, you know, in downtown New York and downtown New York City. So what was the question you asked me again?
Well, you know, there's one thing that we should think about is the precedent set by manned aviation. Darshan was asking about public safety carrying property, another person's property, and I work a lot with our FSDOs, and I always say to them, what would you do if this was a manned aircraft? And then the epiphany happens. Well, I do this. Say, well, it's the same thing pretty much.
Right.
And right. So a lot of helicopter units have a Part 135 certificate. And when they fly, like I live in Fairfax County, Virginia, when they fly passengers who are not crew members, they're flying under either Part 91 or Part 135. So some of these state governments, you know, so the model is there, right? The FAA is going to try and use the same model. So if a public entity like Fairfax County wanted to start getting into the business of delivering stuff for money, you know, they can't do that as a public aircraft. They're going to have to do it as a civil aircraft, and then they would be.
But I think what Darshan is really asking is, can they deliver, like, you know, medical supplies in case of an emergency and that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
And the issue is you can do it under a COA as long as you're not doing it for financial gain.
Right.
In other words, you know, you can't say, hey, we're going to all of a sudden hang this shingle on the wall and say, because we have COVID-19, we're going to start delivering personal protective equipment, and we're going to charge you to do that. So you could basically, as part of your public safety operation, deliver, you know, PPE, you know, to your folks out in the field or whoever else needs it, to isolated communities and that kind of stuff, as long as you're not doing it for financial gain. I mean, there's still a couple other little hoops you might want to look at. And then you also have to satisfy all the requirements of flying under a COA or Part 107 or however you're planning on doing it. The issue is I don't foresee that most public safety agencies are going to suddenly say, hey, you know what would be really cool? What if we start delivering McDonald's as part of our drone work, you know, we're doing? We're already out here flying, you know, but I don't foresee that coming unless somebody, you know, I know one time years ago we talked about putting an advertisement on our patrol cars, and that sort of, you know, came and went very quickly. But you know,
but Mike, the question also comes through is, like, during disasters, a lot of agencies get reimbursed by FEMA, and how does that work then?
So you cannot, and we just had somebody ask this question, you know, and I tried to explain to them that, you know, under law, you can't take a FEMA reimbursement to fly your UAS or to conduct a public aircraft operation. Then you'll be in violation of federal law. And so the guy who I was talking to, and I won't name him, didn't believe me. So I said, fine, I'm just Mike O'Shea. I'm not a lawyer. I didn't sleep on a Holiday Inn last night. So I hooked him up with our Office of Chief Counsel and the folks who do handle public aircraft operations. And that's Karen Petronas and Francisco Castillo. And they both responded back essentially the same thing, saying, no, it would be a violation of federal law. And these are the
nullifies
kind of
public status in your civil aircraft.
That's right.
So
I wanted to ask, because I think the folks that tune in, the 107 people, you know, it's drones here, and in Fayetteville with Causey Unmanned, Aviation Unmanned, and Flytrex, we've got operations going on under Part 107, and all the talk of 135. Where does that leave 107 pilots as far as being able to fill that role and waivers? Because if it goes 135 standard, the way 135 works, commercial operator, and for the community here, where it's like not our 135 operators, lots of, you know, drone pilots got their 107. What's the potential or opportunity?
So
You mean to be a charter pilot?
Under some of these operations, you know, first of all, we sort of see 135 as like big operations. We're not seeing it as a replacement to people operating a 107. At least I haven't seen that.
Well, no, for the pilots that these companies are going to hire.
So let me get to that. That's the next question. So
Okay.
these companies that came to us said, we can't hire Part 61 pilots, commercial pilots, to conduct these operations. So they asked for exemptions to that regulation so that they could actually hire somebody who is a Part 107 pilot. And I believe, and I'd have to go back and look, that some of those were granted. I think that was for, well, I don't want to say because I don't want to tell you because I'm not positive, but I remember them going through the argument because I was working partnership with PSPs, Partnership for Safety. Can't speak, John.
Yeah.
Partner for Safety program.
That'd be all right, Mike. Don't worry
Actually
about
looked at some of the companies that want to do some of these deliveries and stuff. And that was an issue for them is why do I want to hire somebody that has to certify regularly on, you know, a complex aircraft with a commercial pilot's license when really all he's going to be doing is monitoring a system that's actually flying the drone. And so and because of that, the FAA said, yeah, you may want to do that, but this is what the rule is. So they petitioned for an exemption to that rule.
So not to change the subjects, I'm just jumping in so everybody can ask questions. First off, Riley here, Vice President of the chapter. Before I even ask the question, I'd really like to thank John, Mike, and Miriam for coming on and being a part of this today, and all of our viewers for jumping in. One thing that I did like that you guys, and kind of piggybacking off kind of the conversation that we're having, one thing that I really like that you guys hit, both John and Mike, on the previous part or intro that we did, was the importance for public safety. We do a lot of classes across the state with our academy and working with the state and all the state entities and being a state entity ourselves. We do a lot of classes for UAS, and we spend a lot of time in front of those classes preaching to them that as a Part 107 pilot, they are viewed as aviation, as an aviation pilot, and are held to those regards. And I'm very thankful that you guys made that statement, because in working with you guys, we have always tried to push that in front of all the classes. So all these pilots truly understand that they are in that aviation thing or viewed as a true pilot. And I would like for you guys just briefly, if you'll just touch on that for some of our public safety people that are tuned in today on this drone talk, that is the truth, that you guys really do view these pilots, even though they may be public safety and may put out the red stuff, or, you know, they arrest folks. If they are a Part 107 and they are flying, they are held to those standards as a true pilot.
Part 107 or Part 91. If you're flying under Part 91 as a public aircraft, you need, and your chief need to really read very slowly and very carefully 91.3A, I think it is, where it says the pilot in command is the final authority and responsible. That means, you know, if you say, well, I blew off the reg so I can go do this, and I hit a bus driven by a nun full of orphans and it crashed into the nuclear power plant, so it's okay, right? No, it's not okay. Not okay. You're gonna swing in the wind with the responsible person who was also responsible for ensuring compliance and responsible to the FAA. And they don't get that. They don't get that. And they're, you know, and this is, I think if some of the folks knew that when you put your name as the responsible person, that really means you're responsible. right? And you're accountable. And some of them are going to probably start squirming a little bit once they realize the significance of that. And I hope they do before somebody hits a bus driven by non full of orphans and it crashes into the nuclear power plant, right? And under Part 107, I think it's 107.19. I had it on my slide. It's either I think it's 19B. The pilot in command is the final authority and personally responsible. So, and there is no excuse for not complying with the rules. And I can tell you that there are some state police helicopter boys who are put into the penalty box. You know, they were grounded for 6 months because they were naughty, and they were held responsible for violating some flight rules. And so the rules, and this is the big thing, Riley, so kind of thank you for teeing that up. The rules do apply to public entities just as they apply to civil operators. There is no get out of jail free card. And I personally believe that, God forbid, if somebody hits a bus driven by a non full of orphans and it crashes into the nuclear power plant, that the FAA will be the least of their problems. And I'm going to have a career after that I get out of the FAA as an expert witness, making millions, suing those cities and counties for gross negligence. You know, so I mean, it's really serious, and we do really. It's no kidding. If you're outside, you're in the national airspace system, and the safety and the efficiency of that system demands compliant and knowledgeable aviators operating aircraft.
John, I have a question. If we are flying equipment under 55 pounds in an autonomous setting that's been pre-approved, obviously, in a waiver, BVLOS, we're still Part 107, is that correct? And part one of that question. Part two is, if we're doing an inspection that goes over a state line, we're not delivering anything, but we would be flying eventually autonomously. Is that still all Part 107?
Man, what does autonomous mean? There's 7 levels of autonomous, right?
Right.
So what do you mean by that, right? So is somebody, and so let me, because it's a great question, right? It's the Holy Grail. This is what we want, right? We want those kind of operations where somebody's sitting in a Connex 300 miles away, and there it goes and does its thing, right? And doesn't hit John's OH-58 tail rotor, right? And so that's what we all want. So under Part 107, the pilot in command must be in a position to see the drone at all times during the flight, from the moment it takes off until it lands. And he or she could use a visual observer co-located with them. You can't daisy chain visual observers unless you obtain a waiver for beyond visual line of sight. So, and now autonomous, that's a little bit of unobtainium right now. That's the new element in the periodic table I call unobtainium, because there's different levels of autonomous, and ultimately, at least today, I mean, down the road, will we be there? I think we will. Yes, I think we will, Bronwyn. But today, that's a real technical, because the pilot in command still needs to be able to intervene, and they have to have eyes on it, right? There's a whole lot of safety mitigations that would have to be in place for that to happen. Different layers. I think this kind of segues into a couple things, right? The UTM, the UAS traffic management system, defense in layers or layered defenses. Right? There's so many technological things, but will we be there? I think so, yes. Is your question though, is the question partly, is this a 135 operation? And I would say probably not.
Okay.
135, because you're not carrying cargo for someone else. If you're a electric utility carrying your stuff to a crew that's on a hilltop working, you're not carrying someone else's property. It's not carriage of other person's property for profit. If you're
Okay.
flying, if you're John and Mike's aerial drone delivery company, and I'm charging your electric utility to do all that stuff, then that might be a 135 operation, particularly if you're crossing state lines or going beyond visual line of sight.
I'll reach out to you one-on-one. Thank you so much.
Mike, as John was mentioning about UTM, I think we had a little bit discussion yesterday about remote ID and counter US. You just want to give us an update on whatever you can.
So the remote ID rule is obviously still in rulemaking. So we were prohibited from saying general stuff about the rule and by ex parte. I can speak generally about it. I can tell you that I heard both the administrator and the Secretary of Transportation last week say that the rule will be out by the end of this calendar year. I will tell you that there is an ASTM standard for remote ID that some people have built some examples of what could possibly work. I don't know if the ASTM standard will be adopted as part of the rule. Nobody knows until the final magic comes out the other end. But ideally, what we hope the rule will do for everybody is give public safety and citizens the ability to take a smartphone or some kind of a technology, and if you see a drone, you can ID a drone. It's sort of the basic minimum requirement that we're hoping to get. And then what you get additionally from that will depend on what the rule says. And I'm not sure what that is. I will tell you that I heard I was looking at some of the forums. We had 53,000 comments on the rules, and some of the people said that they didn't believe that we read the rules or read the comments. And there was, I can't remember, it was 5,000 or 6,000 public safety comments. It took me over 4 weeks, but I read them all and commented on all of them and had to put them in a answered category. So we did read got all divided up within the FAA, but every single comment was reviewed and added to the docket.
So you said there was about 5,000, 6,000 comments from public safety, right?
Yep.
So why do you feel that there's so less compared to the overall comments coming from public safety? You said the number was 53,000, if I'm not wrong.
Yep.
Yeah. So compared to that, 5,000, 6,000 just coming purely from public safety, does I don't know, it does give us a little bit message that is there a lack of education? Is there a lack of information? Or is there a lack of drone programs in the public safety? That's why.
I don't know the answer to that. And unfortunately, I only saw the public safety comments, so I didn't see the other comments. So I don't know what they were responding about, or if they had issues, or they loved it, or whatever. But so I really can't answer that question.
Sure. And then you mentioned about counter US that airports are doing some things. Can you just mention, tell us a little bit about that?
Yep. In the 2018 Reauthorization Act, there's actually a section there that talks about the federal government working on research for counter UAS, specifically around airports. And then we're doing that in cooperation with DHS, TSA. The work is being currently conducted up at the FAA's Technology Center up in Atlantic City, New Jersey. And then they're also working with all the federal partners. I don't know how familiar you are with counter UAS right now, but we're really strong technology-wise when it comes to detection, but we're not really good when it comes to mitigation. And that right now that what we want and what the technology will support is not always the same thing. We've seen some, and right now the authorities belong to use counter UAS belong to 4 agencies. And that's Department of Defense, Department of Energy, Department of Justice, and Department of Homeland Security. All have to coordinate with the FAA to make sure it doesn't impact the safety of the national airspace. But we've seen some agencies think that they can just go off and do counter UAS. Luckily, we've resolved some of those before they became issues. One agency, a very large agency, decided to use active GPS denial, and right next to a major port, where ships came in that used GPS to transit, and right next to an international airport where pilots use GPS to land and take off and make approaches and stuff. So, people don't understand the unintended consequences and the impact on the national airspace. And so we've been working with agencies on that. But I think what you'll eventually see is you'll see some of the work being done, by DOJ, around, when they show up at national security events, the Federal Bureau of Prisons, and some of the people that really need to have this in place right now will be testing the different technologies. But I don't think we've seen the solution that's that's going to work for everything. I think a lot of things play into that. I mean, remote ID does that too. It will show us some information. It'll show us people who are non-compliant with the rule, which is probably something that we need to pay a lot of attention to when we're using counter UAS. But I hate to say stand by, it's coming, but that's really where we're at.
Sure. And this question is to both John and Mike. So with the Part 107, I'm sure you have heard a lot of people saying it wasn't enough and there could have been done more on the Part 107. So we know that 2020 is here. What's the next couple of years like? What information do you have for us general people that we need to be prepared that is going to come in the changes with Part 107?
I don't know what, I'm not on the rulemaking team. I don't know what proposed changes, if any, are. I mean, I know there is a notice of proposed rulemaking out for night and operations over people, but remote ID has to come out first. I do think, the rules are a means to an end. What's coming, in John's opinion, is type certification of drones. What's coming is the UAS traffic management system. What's coming is remote ID. All of those, when they finally get here and mature, I think are going to be significant strategic level changes to how drones are used for both public safety and economic entities. I think 107 was a great enabler. Remember, let's rewind the tape to pre-107. Everybody had to get a Section 333 exemption, right? And they were flown under, the only flight rules that existed for aircraft were Part 91. They were the general, right? The Part 91, the existing framework was there. And so, well, okay, in order to do that, you had to get exemptions, and it was a nightmare, right? So they created this. And I think it was a great first step, and it has enabled some really good operations, and there's been some real drones for good. You know the stories better than me, and you've been involved with a lot of it in North Carolina. And but where's 107 going? I think you're going to see more than just 107. I think, but again, time will tell, and I'm not on the rulemaking committee team, and I don't think Mike is either. But and again, right, I'm going to come back to the phrase that we use all the time. It's evolutionary. This is revolutionary stuff, but it's evolving every day, and the changes are happening so fast. And from a regulatory point of view, right, we've had 80 years of manned aviation, and look how much has happened with unmanned aviation in 3 years. It's pretty amazing. And so
anything to add, Mike, to that?
Yeah, we like to joke at the FAA that the only constant is change. And there is a team that's actually looking at the 107 rule, and there's a couple different teams. One is looking at 107 and comparing that to public safety issued COAs. What are the differences, and what can we gain from each of them? And there is the team that's looking at the kind of sort of 107 of the future. What do we need to change? And they're looking at the sections that are really hard for us to issue waivers or authorizations for, like flights over people, beyond visual line of sight, and they actually have formed a team that's specifically looking at how do we create guidelines to allow flights over people and operations beyond visual line of sight. What does that look like? Because the FAA is famous for and we say it even in the FAA, that we say, bring us a rock, and then we say, no, that's not the right rock. And we want to make sure we get more in the businesses saying, hey, if you want to do this, this is the criteria you need to meet to start talking to us. Instead of people just saying, we go from either people saying, I'm really important, let me fly beyond visual line of sight, to people coming to us saying, I have such great technology I have, visual analytics, with 360-degree cameras around my drone. I have miniature radar systems that can see all over the place. I have acoustic detection that can hear a bird chirping 5 miles away and let me know I need to avoid it. And somewhere in between those two things, we need to come up with sort of a standard that says, if you meet this, you get to this, we create sort of a waiver safety guideline just for beyond visual line of sight that we give you the information on what it's going to take to meet it. And it helps us too, because we get beat up all the time by people saying, I want to fly beyond visual line of sight, and I got a camera that looks forward.
Right. And I'm a good guy. And I'm a good guy. And I'm a good guy.
I'm a great guy. And gosh darn it, people like me.
And my signal almost never fails.
But and so we need to sort of create some sort of the minimum criteria or requirements to enable these operations. But these are one of those things is until we get enough people coming to us and we sort of say, we know that works, we know that works, we know that works, or we can sort of compile it into that document that says, if you meet this, this, and this, then we're going to enable this type of operation. And we're just not there yet, because, reality, I've seen the technology, and there's some people who spent some really big bucks on some really cool stuff. It doesn't work. There's a lot of vaporware out there, but the stuff that, to Mike O'Shea, it's not the official opinion of the FAA or anything else, just Mike O'Shea, somebody who's very interested in this technology. I think the future is probably video analytics. I mean, we already know that you can hold up your smartphone and it can see aircraft in the sky that you can't see, because the camera on there is better than Mike O'Shea's eyeballs, even assisted by my really thick glasses here. And I think that's what we're going to see. We're going to see drones that have, basically cameras that provide 360-degree coverage, that has the smart analytics that tells me, that that's a bird out there, or that's an aircraft out there, and this is what the aircraft needs to do to avoid that. And it's probably going to get better with artificial intelligence, that the aircraft's going to take its own action. It's not going to wait for Mike O'Shea to say, should I go higher or lower? Should I go left or right? The drone's going to know that, the path of the other aircraft, or the path of the other drone, or the path of the bird is going this way. It needs to go this way, while still going the direction you actually want it the destination you wanted to get to. And I think that's coming. And one of the nice things that the good thing about these companies like Amazon and Google and all these other companies, they're driving the effort. I mean, they're the ones that are sort of in the lab creating this stuff, or paying for it to be created. But when it's all said and done, you're the one who's going to benefit from it at the end.
True.
And I tell you, I'm really excited. And, I've worked with Amazon, and those guys, they didn't treat this like, hey, we're Amazon, let us fly. They built basically they have labs, they have wind tunnel testing, they've been through they have their own software developers. Everybody's an aerospace engineer. Their breadth of experiences is really, really impressive. But I don't expect you to have that. I don't expect the average public safety agency to have that. But I hope that we'll benefit from what they do.
True. And I think, let me move to the next question. Like Jim, you had a question, so I'm going to unmute you.
Well, let me jump back, because we had one that's been in chat for a while. So
Okay.
then we'll get to Jim.
Okay.
So Chris O'Connor with Nevada Institute of Autonomous Systems is asking, with the waiver safety explanation guidelines and risk management, it doesn't address risk analysis. Are there standardized models that the FAA are looking at to implement inside that would be approved, that would help out those seeking waivers?
So I think we can probably answer this both, but if someone's really interested in it, let me know, because there's been a lot of work done on safety risk management and creating those risk categories and what those look like. And you've seen the standard blocks that say, green, yellow, red, where should I be able to fly? But some of the issues with those is who makes those decisions and how are they based? And so we've done a lot of work on sort of creating, I haven't, I just get to see on the outside. But some of the folks who are involved with this, flight standards where John works, and some of the people in our offices in the Office of Unmanned Aircraft Systems Integration have developed these processes that we've used to sort of evaluate people's safety cases, or alternate means of compliance for rules and stuff. And if you're interested and you need to know more about that, I'm certainly able to hook you up with the guy in our office who sort
we'll get a waiver from, or that was submitted to you guys from a public service agency, and it basically says we want to fly a mission over said road to look for X. And our simple question is, this is like a child submitted this. Like you provided no information to these guys, and in our classes we try to go over that you guys need the data on how safe this mission is going to be, what safety factors are you going to put into place, what is all the information that encompasses this flight that you're going to do. And since we're talking about the data you guys you always need, could you just touch base on the meat and potatoes that you guys really need for these waivers to be approved?
I mean, that's an excellent observation, Riley. And I got 2 emails this week from public safety people says the same thing. And I took a 10 second. It took me 10 seconds. I looked at their thing and it basically said, we're a police department. We want to fly at night and over people, and we're good guys, and we're going to be really good. Well, and they never ever came close to answering any of the waiver safety explanation guidelines. And when you have 19,000 of them in the queue, and you get these that don't even answer the basic question, it tells us really that, oh, you didn't take the time to really learn anything, and we're not going to approve you. Just because you're a good guy. And so I think where they're all, once I send them the waiver safety explanation guidelines and I tell them, copy them, paste them into a Word document, answer them, focus on how and a procedure, then the light bulb goes off and they're like, oh, wow. Okay, I get it now. And what's sad to me is when some of these entities have a helicopter unit nearby and they don't talk to those guys about, hey, how do you as aviators think about this question? Or even go to a certified flight instructor at a local flight school and get some an hour of ground school. But I think that's the big question. And again, these are uncertificated consumer grade products flying on unlicensed spectrum with unproven equipment made by unknown manufacturers with unknown processes, and oh, by the way, we're going to do things that could kill somebody. That's a tough sell.
So, Jim, do you want to still ask the question? I think you can unmute yourself, or do I need to unmute you?
Is this the question about the parachute?
No, he had raised his hand, Jim Semron. Let's see if he's on his iPhone, so he had raised his hand and was some time back. So let's hope if he comes back. Jim, if you have the question, you can always come back and ask. The question which Jay Cohen put was good, about the Para-Zero drone.
I'll answer that question, and John could probably jump in and answer probably even better. But so we get this a lot. People say, well, if I get a parachute, does that give me the right to fly over people? And the answer is, you're building a safety mitigation case, and so it adds to the safety mitigation case, but it's not like I have a parachute, so thus I get this.
Right.
It's one component of your safety mitigation case. And people say, well, if I have a parachute, I should be able to fly over people. And I said, well, think about it this way. I don't know where you live, but I have I-95 that runs really close to my house. So I-95 is constant traffic. Nobody does slower except during rush hour than 75 miles an hour on that thing. So if a drone falls into that traffic, very heavily congested traffic, on a parachute, what do you think is going to happen? And the answer is it's going to create mayhem. Cars are going to hit each other. The drone's going to go through a windshield. So a parachute doesn't solve for that. And people don't think this through sometimes. They think, well, I don't have to worry about moving vehicles. Yeah, you do, because it's not just flights over people, it's flights over people and moving vehicles. And so you have to answer for all that. And then I saw someone said, well, it has to meet the ASTM standard. And I want to point out that a lot of times the FAA will adopt ASTM standards. I'm not aware that we've adopted the ASTM standard for parachutes. I know they have one.
We have not.
And you have to be very careful, because people say, well, we meet the ASTM standard. And it's like, but we're not ASTM. We're the FAA. Does it, and a lot of times we'll take a look and we sit on those committees and we participate in those committees. But just like when I was at the Department of Justice, that we had ASTM committees for body armor, but we adopt what we thought made sense. We didn't adopt them wholeheartedly because, we own the standard, just like the FAA owns the standard for flight. So we adopt what we think is going to serve our needs the best while making sure we assure the safety of the airspace. So I'm always nervous of when people say, well, yeah, they'll provide the paperwork for me so I can just get the waiver. And then people say, yeah, it happens all the time. But I got to tell you that it doesn't. It's part of the mitigation process that you can certainly add. If you're flying in, I know that the cases that were sort of highly publicized with the parachute. One was a utility company out of Colorado that was flying power lines in very remote areas. They said for safety mitigation, one, we're in very, very rural areas. The likelihood of encountering people is very small. So, but if we have a parachute, will that help? And the answer for us was, yeah. But because it was part of the safety mitigation, the real mitigation is that they're operating where people aren't going to be. That was the big safety mitigation case, not the parachute. It just added to the mitigation. So I would caution you that there's no simple solutions out there, not that I've seen yet, that have been adopted by the FAA or certified by the FAA to meet the criteria for, either 107.3.1 or 107.3.9.
I think that was a great answer. I would just add to the, for 107.39, operations over human beings, there are 4 major questions you have to answer with a whole slew of A, B, C, and D. And on the question of, here's one, it says, if the UAS incorporates any safety features that reduce the severity of impact on a person, what are they and how do they reduce the injury to a human if hit? I bet you they didn't answer that, right? So again, if you, as Mike said, these are, it's not I install a parachute and then I get my get out of jail free card. No, it's how are you going to conduct this operation as safely or safer than if we didn't allow you to fly over people. And parachute, great, but how, again, that's only one small part of that waiver safety explanation guideline. So even if they say I got I used the magic buzzword parachute, and they still denied me. Why? Well, because you didn't address the safety issues sufficiently.
And another issue we saw with parachutes where we had people requesting fly over large crowds using a parachute. And the first question we asked is, how long does it take the parachute to deploy? And everybody was like, and we said, well, how high are you flying? And they'd say, well, typically about 200 feet. Well, if the airplane's dropping out of the sky, it's a simple math, the weight of that aircraft, the kinetic energy falling, gravity, and then how long it takes for that parachute to open. In a lot of cases, the parachute would not open prior to hitting the people. So, people are like, but it meets a standard. Yeah, but what is the standard? Does the standard say that it's going to open up at any altitude? And
right, and it doesn't
sorry,
work for your operation.
Nuts. My wife just got home.
Shay, my question is that, if you're operating over 1 person or 500 people, that doesn't change the fact of what's going to happen. So how do you mitigate? What's the difference between 1 person, 500 people, whether you're over a highway, whether you're over, any other operation, what's the standard? What's the difference between how we say that, this is acceptable risk, this is not acceptable?
So one of the ways the FAA has been doing that is looking in terms of population density. So if you have less people, or you're operating in an area that has less people, then we consider there's less risk there. And that's what, well, let me close my door here so that. So that's one way we look at it. But there's different ways you can evaluate the risk. And I will tell you, we have allowed aircraft openly to fly over people. And a good example is CNN, the news company. They fly a little drone called the Snap. And we've allowed it to fly over people because they basically proved to us that when that thing hits, it hits a person, it falls out of the sky, it's held together by magnets, it weighs nothing, and when it hits somebody, it actually hurts the drone more than it hurts the person. It falls apart in pieces, you can pick it up, put the magnets back together and put it together, but it causes absolutely no harm whatsoever to hitting somebody. It would have to somebody would have to really go out of their way to get injured by this drone. I mean, it's that simple.
Yeah, and
And
I think you're coming to the point that it's
So
situational
then is there a
dependent.
standard of, my drone is held together by magnets. My drone is not, it's heavier. My drone is 500 pounds and it drops it, it's going to hurt someone. What's the standardization of this is dangerous, this is medium risk, this is high.
And that's where we do the safety risk management. That's what that's about is determining, if the kinetic energy of a 500-pound drone is hitting you is obviously a lot more than something that weighs, a couple of ounces. And that's sort of how we make that determination. So if you come to us and say, I'm flying a 500-pound drone over a large crowd, and your mitigation is, well, I have a parachute that might open on time, the answer is probably going to be no. But if you came to us and said, I'm flying a drone that weighs, 10 ounces, that is in the propeller have prop guards and shrouds, and and then when it drops, it's made out of Nerf material, whatever. I mean, then you're telling us that drone, the kinetic energy impact of that drone is probably unlikely to cause death or major injury to if it hits somebody.
Correct. I agree with that. Is there a metric or a matrix that I can follow?
That's the issue, and that's kind of goes back to my earlier comment. Is we need, we're still having people bring us the rock, and the reason why is we haven't figured out yet what is that sweet spot, I guess is a better way. What is that It weighs enough that can conduct the missions you want, but has the kinetic energy that's low enough that it's not going to really injure somebody if it falls out of the sky. And part of the reason we went with the reliability or durability and reliability testing, that the I don't want to say streamline, that's a bad word. The more expedited process for certifying aircraft is to give them the ability to take that aircraft to a certification process, so that we have a safety assurance that airplane's probably not going to fall out of the sky. For the most part, it's going to stay up there and not cause any issues. And I got to tell you that, I still hear from people say, well, my drone never falls out of the skies. And you can name any drone out there, and I can give you the examples of when it fell out of the sky and hit something or someone. And especially in the state of North Carolina, I'm very familiar with the fire department there that has had a lot of issues with a specific drone that keeps falling out of the sky. And I'll tell you that I own, how many drones do I own? I think I own 5 or 6, and all of them have crashed at one point or another. And not because of the brilliant piloting by Mike O'Shea.
Yeah, I would just
not, but I appreciate that. And my final follow-on is there any effort to develop some sort of this, what you were talking about of,
Yeah, and so that's sort of where that's the next step. When Darshan asked what's the future of the FAA that's going to impact, the operators and stuff, that's sort of where we're taking stuff. How do we come up with a certification process that says this aircraft is safe to fly over people? And that's actually going to come out after the remote ID rule. We have sort of a minimum standard that's really designed for the manufacturers to go through a limited approval for flights over people, and it's based on a lot of things, kinetic energy, weight, and a bunch of other stuff. But what the future is we're sort of looking at, and we'll use the data we get from that to see what kind of impact that's had on the national airspace and people on the ground. And then the goal is to sort of take that to the next step. So when are we comfortable enough with these aircraft operating that we don't think they're going to hit people? Or what are the limitations we put in place? We say, yeah, you can fly over, people, but only incidentally, you can't fly over large crowds, but that hasn't happened yet. Part of the reason is one, we're waiting for the rule for flying over people to come out so we can sort of figure out where we go from that when that final rule comes out. And then the second is sort of, the future of the technology. I mean, I only assume that drones will get better and better. And I can tell you, when I was at the Department of Justice back in 2003, we were paying $100,000 for a drone that fell out of the sky. I mean, compared to my DJI Spark, my Spark outflew that thing about 1,000,000 to 1. And the technology just has evolved that much. From a $100,000 drone that fell out of the sky all the time to, a $400 drone that pretty much stays up there all the time, except for the time I ran it into a tree. Not my fault.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that. I get paid a lot less, so let me know what you need to help.
No, I don't get paid that. That's what it costs for the drone.
No, thank you for your time.
No problem.
But I just want to add, though, Christopher, that you know, it's so situational and mission dependent at this stage, and flying over people, if you want to fly over people with a drone that weighs less than 55 pounds, then the pathway to go down is the waiver safety explanation guidelines, and really get the data, get the answers that way. If you're talking about a drone that weighs 55 pounds or more, now you're operating under Part 91, and you're if you're operating as a commercial entity, you're going to have to petition for exemptions to a lot of those rules that are under Part 91, and that's a frustrating.
No, yes, sir, John.
process.
I completely agree with you, and 100% understand that. You know, the safety is the primary concern. It's just that you know, my position is that there is not a standardized way to demonstrate safety, as you talked about earlier. You know, if someone looks at a different person that's already gotten a waiver approved, and then they just kind of retype all the words and processes, but they haven't actually looked at it to say, hey, you know, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. You know, what is the correct answer or format, or, you know, even the checklist. I'm a big checklist guy too, former military. You know, have I looked at this? Have I looked at that? You know, have I taken all of these safety ideas or accounts or incidents or anything into account before I conduct operations? There isn't a, hey, have you looked at this? Have you looked at this? Have you looked at this?
Yeah, but again, these are uncertificated machines. A lot of that clarity will come when you're only going to be operating a certificated machine that's certificated production certificate, right? With a maintenance program, with approved parts list. So it's still evolving, right? We're still in the barnstormer days.
Correct, but you know, again, as Mike said earlier, you know, everything is changing fast. The technology is changing faster than what we can keep up with. So we gotta.
Yeah, I you know, it kind of reminds me of the conversation I have with flight standards inspectors who are always saying, well, John, what's the distance that I lose visual line of sight on the drone at night?
Right, it changes every day.
Changes, it changes all the time, right? And there's so many factors, and what the FAA, that's why we're moving towards performance-based regulations as opposed to descriptive regulations, which is, look, you got to be able to see it, right? And that we know that atmospheric conditions, lighting, there's so many factors that dictate, like, oh yeah, I can see it. You can see it or you can't, right? And a half a mile today might be a quarter mile tomorrow. And
absolutely, much less if you're covered in smoke and everything else.
Yeah, and some of these large drones operating in the national forest in the middle of nowhere in a TFR, you know, might be easier to say yes, as opposed to flying in downtown DC.
And I think the technology is changing fast in regards to software and the computing power, but the systems, now we've actually seeing, like, you can put 4 motors together with some wiring, all electronics, but now we need to prove the reliability of the actual hardware system itself. And I think we've seen whether it's Flytrex, Google, Wing, Zipline, right? They've gotten to that point where they've taken this super developed technology, put it into a system, and they're now proving that reliability. And I think if you think of hard hats on the construction site, they didn't just hand folks hard hats and say, wear this. They tested those hard hats by dropping things on them, figuring out, you know, you go into science, I'm a drone guy, not a science guy. So joules and forces. So the means to figure out how lethal or how much damage a drone could do if the battery isn't maintained, right? We're not inspecting this equipment. Anyone can swap out a battery. You can charge a battery, you can leave it on a charger. So when that battery decides it's just gonna quit, that falls out of the sky. What potential for damage is that drone gonna create? and it's science, right? What's the weight of the drone? What's the altitude? How many joules? We've got Steve Rode here in North Carolina, who's kind of leading a charge in regards to safety of system.
But isn't a lot of that driven by the insurance industry? I mean, that's part of it, right? That's part of the equation.
Sure.
Hey, can I jump in?
I would agree that that's part of the equation, but you know, we're not really talking, you know, about. I mean, the larger conversation will cover insurance and responsibility, but what we're trying to cover right here and now is the safety aspect and the, you know,
So I can tell you that when I sat on the 107 Aviation Rulemaking Committee back in 2008, 2009, when I was still at DOJ, and we had several different presentations on those about what's the kinetic energy of an aircraft, you know, what does it have to weigh to be safe? And they had taken some European standard stuff and they basically said, if it weighs less than 4.4 pounds, then it should be able to fly over people and should be safe. Well, you know, that's great because a lot of the drones we currently fly are that way, but that's not what came out with the rule for some reason. And I don't know if it's because that was just somebody's, you know, wild thoughts or if it was actually scientifically proven or not. But I think you're right. I think what has to happen is someone has to come to us and say, you know, we know, because we worked either with the European authorities or we did our own testing at the University of North Carolina or RTI or North Carolina State University or Elizabeth City State University, but whoever, you know, conducted testing and showed us that the lethality for something that weighs, you know, 5 pounds or less, it falls into this category of risk. You know, and sometimes it depends on the shape of the aircraft and whether or not there's propeller shrouds and that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of stuff that hasn't happened yet. The issue for the FAA
and I 100%
is
agree with you. Who is someone?
the someone that's the issue. It's not the FAA. We don't build technologies.
Right.
We don't build drones. So
Yes,
it
sir.
really is encompassing the manufacturers who build those products to come to us and say, hey, we think we built something that's safe to fly over people. And that's what Snap did with us with CNN. They came to us and said, hey, we got a product we think is safe to fly over people. Then we tested it. And then we said, yeah, you're right. It's perfectly safe, or not perfectly safe, but it's safe enough, I guess is probably an easier way to say that.
Within acceptable risk.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
So,
So we're relying on industry to come and tell us that this is safe.
But that's the way it's always been.
It's
right?
their product. It's not our product.
That's the important, that's why, so drones that do deliveries under a 135 on-demand air carrier, what part of the CFR are they going to be certified under? 325, or is there?
They're actually doing an aircraft certification process with the Los Angeles Aircraft Certification Office out in LA, just like manned aviation does. They're in fact, I've sat through some of the meetings when they've gone through these, and it's kind of amazing because some of the things they have to answer, because I don't know if you know manned aviation, especially 135 operations, they have to have seatbelts. Well, you don't need a seatbelt on a drone. You have to have supplemental oxygen. Well, you don't need supplemental oxygen on a drone. But they're treating them just like manned aircraft, and they're going through the process. And they basically have gone down to a list, both Google and our Project Wing and Amazon and the other companies involved in this have basically, asked for exemptions, all the things that don't apply to manned aircraft systems, and then are taking it through the normal process, the process of type certification, and it's a little more faster.
And they may have a parachute system that they use, so they're going to come with data that says this is why it's safe. And I think what we're talking about is 107. Under 107, you can buy this drone anywhere. So we have like a Para Zero, and what Para Zero did was they went and they tested that enough times to try to create that data. Someone like Chris or 910 Drones, if we have a fleet and we're doing mapping, and say we want to do construction mapping over a local site, we could potentially say we have this parachute system that's been tested. This is the operation that we're going to conduct, and when this parachute deploys.
And I hate to throw this into the equation, and I feel like I'm being the real naysayer when I actually work with the part of the UAS part of the FAA that's supposed to say yes. But the issue with that is you can say this parachute meets an ASTM standard, but does it meet it for that specific drone you're flying? Does it meet it for that specific operation you're conducting? And that's why, in a lot of ways, you know, it makes more sense for a manufacturer to take something to the FAA to say that, hey, this is our product. This is the configuration we've frozen for this process for you to say this is, you know, okay to fly. It has this parachute or it has this Nerf foam ball around it or whatever. But the issue with people coming to us with these onesies and twosies is they have to be evaluated that way. So we can't create a simple standard because you say, I've got this parachute that meets an ASTM standard. That's fine. That's not an FAA standard, but that's good. But it doesn't say that it's only good for this drone. And it doesn't say it is good for this drone. So you have to bring it to us and come back to us and say, okay, I've got this parachute, and I'm flying it on my DJI Spark, and I want you to certify it. So we're gonna have to evaluate it with that different aircraft, that parachute. And then the next guy is gonna come to us and say, well, I'm flying on my Mavic Zoom. The next guy is gonna come to us and say, well, I'm flying it on my Inspire. I'm flying on my Autel. And all of those are gonna have to evaluate it differently. And
So what if you went the other direction?
We're only approving it for you because you're bringing us that specific configuration that you bought that belongs to Mike O'Shea's Spark. It has Mike O'Shea's decals and stickers on it, and Mike O'Shea's, you know, chips in the props. And I'm certifying it for Mike O'Shea. Whereas that's why I'm trying to tell you, I think it's better if we let the manufacturers take this process, as frustrating that is let them so that we certify for all those category drones.
So that's what I'm saying is, like, if you went from the FAA side and said, no, it has to meet these standards, you bring me the onesies, the twosies from industry, and you have met these standards, then those will be applicable to all the Sparks, everything else from the other side, as opposed to coming from the manufacturers.
I'm not sure what you're asking, but I think you're trying to say if what I was trying to say, if the manufacturer brings it, then we certify it for all that class of aircraft that meets that frozen configuration. If you bring it to us, all it meets is what you brought it to us, because you're not responsible for that aircraft except the one that you actually own. You're not on the hook for Mike O'Shea's Spark, even though you certified your Spark, but the manufacturer is.
Yeah, I mean, we have an existing system, a process. I sold airplanes, right? And we, as the manufacturer, would go to the FAA and we would get a type certificate for a King Air. And then Christopher O'Connor and co. would come to the FAA and say, I've got this great widget I want to add to this. And you would petition for a supplemental type certificate. But the idea is that these machines, this is why Mike is making the point here, right? Individual entrepreneurs coming to the FAA asking for a type certificate, in my opinion, are wasting their time and their money, because they're not going to sell millions of these pieces of equipment. It ought to be coming from the manufacturers now.
They have to, that widget has to meet a certain specification.
It will have to meet a certain performance criteria. Yeah, to get a certain type certificate. Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that type certificate will say how it's going to be used and operated, and under what conditions. So again, I think we're just going around and around and around and around here, right?
Yeah,
and I know Simra is trying to get in here for like an hour.
I think it's time to come closer to the session, and there are two questions that came up. One was from Jim. Jim, Samuel, you've been trying to speak. Are you online or did you leave?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay.
I'm up here in Port Huron, Michigan, and my background is in IT. I worked with Ross Perot EDS for 20-some years, and then was a Navy commander, so I understand the government contracting. So back in 2009, we had the Fire Scout helicopter, which was a drone. I mean, it's the size of a regular helicopter. Mm-hmm. But I'm also a member of the shipmasters here for the Great Lakes ships, and drones have an enormous, their utility could be incredible because of the ice, and you can look out, and see if you're going to run into danger. And I was at a shipmasters conference a couple years ago. We had some drones, and some of these things are like $40,000 a piece. I mean, they're really expensive. I know the Fire Scout helicopter was about, I don't know, some number in the millions. And, you know, drones have been around for a long time. We're actually now looking at commercializing this technology, you know, a little better than Best Buy. So drones have an enormous applicability for this Great Lakes shipping, all big ships, you know, the 1,000-foot ships and the Navy. And I think where we're at right now, and to our friends at the FAA, their manufacturers need to have the robustness in the product. It just can't be a toy, okay? And they're trying to put a framework around it, just like the Navy did, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman did for the drones for the military. We need that same kind of robustness in the products for delivery. And again, it points back to the manufacturers. The manufacturers are going to have to take responsibility for that. And we're in the infancy of all of this. So it is a little bit of a wild, wild west. But that's kind of cool because that's going to lead to a lot of innovation. And then the FAA will bring some sanity to it just so that we don't have drones that are going out there that are actually bombs, which, by the way, people are thinking about right now. I mean, you can fly a drone in there and, and we need to protect ourselves, the community, from those kinds of vulnerabilities. So FAA is a good player in this space. And I think this dialogue that you're having, Deshaun, is really important. I mean, we have to have this kind of dialogue, and the editorials and the communications that are going to socialize this across the enterprise. Over.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the history of aircraft certification. FAA doesn't come out and say, all right, we want you to build an airplane that goes Mach 0.35 and it cruises. We don't do that, right? Manufacturers come to us and say, I got this airplane that goes Mach 0.35 cruises, and we then go through that process. And the overall concept today is to try to fit UAS, try to integrate UAS into the existing processes, recognizing that, and I think Mike made the point earlier that, some of these are not going to have seatbelts. Some of them are, right? So,
I want to add one other point. The guy put in the chat box about the 5G. And I've been paying attention a lot to this one. Actually, I'm going to be at a conference next Tuesday for the Horizontal Launch Space Initiative. And the issue with the 5G and just the autonomous vehicles by itself. I mean, in Detroit, there's a lot of autonomous vehicles type stuff. Problem is the fidelity of the signals for like a motor vehicle or autonomous boat is you don't have the sensitivity. I mean, 12 feet is not good enough, okay? And so with your existing GPS, 12 feet is okay. But with a Tomahawk cruise missile or an automobile or a drone, 12 feet is not good enough. So the space initiative in the 5G is expected to, not today, sometime in the future, bring us the fidelity that we need to fly drones by wire beyond the line of sight or beyond the RF capability of the controller. Over.
Hey, Jim, if there really is an interest in using unmanned aircraft systems to facilitate shipping on the Great Lakes, do me a favor and email me because that sounds like a perfect partnership for safety program. I was working with industry on getting something done that meets all of our criteria for, transportation and all the other stuff that we love to work on. I would love to work on. Plus, I like the Great Lakes.
I can help you do that. I know the presidents of the companies that operate these big 1,000-footer, 800-footers. And I tell you what, drones, you'll love this one. So I asked Commander Doris at the Coast Guard Sector Detroit, I said, Okay, these guys in Canada and the United States are flying drones out to the bridge of a 1,000-footer, and they got their camera on. Is it okay to shoot them? And he thought about it for a little while, and he said, "Yes, you can." So if they are creating a hazard and a danger for a ship's captain, now granted, I've never heard of a story of that happening, or any of the follow-on lawsuits or legal things like that. But if it's endangering a captain driving a 1,000-foot ship, you need to get that out of there. Okay.
So that's actually a really cool question to ask our attorneys that are dealing with, when can you use counter UAS and when you can't. Right now under federal law, technically that'd be illegal, but having said that, there are special other laws that says the captain has the duty to protect the ship and the people on that ship. So that's one of those things I would love to say, you can't do it or you can do it, but I think that I'm going to have to leave that to the lawyers to can answer that probably better, but it's an interesting question.
Those are issues that have not been experienced yet. And that's why I said we're a little bit in the wild, wild west. Once we get those rules,
I wouldn't want to be the ship captain who is the first to do that.
I wouldn't either.
Especially if it's a lawyer who's operating the drone.
But the Department of Defense does have authority to do that.
They do.
But the Coast Guard is not part of the Department of Defense, as far as I know.
The Coast Guard has the authority. They're part of the Department of Homeland Security.
Yeah.
But if you want to talk to me sometime later, Jim, I would love to talk about using drones to look for ice and stuff on the Great Lakes. I think that's a phenomenal way to use drones to further. And anybody else here who has sort of a unique business concept or that you think that it would help to behoove you to work with the FAA to sort of achieve that. And I will tell you that typically they're looking for big things like, checking power lines through 10 states, or something to that extent, and that's kind of what we look up for the Partnership for Safety Program. Amazon is one of those. Google Wings is one of those. And XL Energy and some other companies are involved with this process. But if you have something like that where you think, we got this huge project we're working on, but the FAA is hard to work with. We sort of have this program in place that we're looking at unique and different problems that need solutions, and we sort of work with the industry to get those accomplished.
No, so DTE up in Detroit, this is a perfect application for drones to look at high power lines, okay, without putting somebody at risk. And I understand Pacific Gas and Light is now using drones to look at the fires out in California. So
they actually hired a contractor that we approved last week to do power line, Pacific Gas and Electric, to do power line inspections.
So I think with that, we come close to the time, and we don't want FAA to tell us that we went overtime. It's a Friday. First of all, let's change the notion that FAA is not friendly. This changes everything, and John and Mike are the poster boys for FAA.
We always say we're not happy unless you're unhappy. That's our motto.
I think we're the swimsuit models for the FAA.
Yeah, they have their calendars. AUVSI and CA is promoting those calendars. We are raising funds for that. So, but that's the thing. This is what the industry is, and it's changing. We are watching industries collaborate with the federal agencies, but also universities collaborating with the federal agencies. FAA just released their university initiative. So FAA is doing a lot. It's just that they cannot do everything instantly. It takes time, and as John and Mike keeps mentioning, it's the data that is important. They need data to change regulations. They need data to even implement anything. And so it's patience is one of the biggest thing in this industry that we have to learn, and we cannot expect fast results. The change takes its time, and there are so many conferences where you are going to meet fellow FAA experts. Use that opportunity to ask questions. but also take time to read the questions that FAA has already posted on their site. There's a lot of information already FAA has on their site, and what happens many times is you don't visit those sites, you don't check all the information, and you end up asking the same question again and again, and you don't come to the main question wherein you have you need answers for. So FAA has a lot of information out there. Spend some time, some days just looking through all the information and just stay current with the knowledge. But it also comes back to the point that we are in 2020 now, and a lot has changed. Today's session was, I would say, one of the best sessions. Me and Riley were texting each other about it. One of the best sessions that we have had. Very informative, very it was very informal, but also at the same time we were able to answer a wide range of topics. The first session, the 1 hour session, is recorded. Even this is recorded. We will have all that on our AUSI social media. So be sure to follow the social media. We'll be posting the links and everything. And if you're registered for this event, we'll send you an email also. John and Mike, taking their time off and being here on a Friday just shows that there's not much work in FAA to do. No, I'm just joking. There's a lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah. Wait till you get my personal bill for India Pale Ales, my friend.
Oh, I think that is a secret. We were not discussing all those things.
There's so many great breweries in North Carolina. Surely
Yes.
that could be shared.
Yes, exactly.
So someone just posted a quick question. You mentioned university initiatives. Where can I find more info? I haven't found anything online. Do you all want to answer that question quickly?
Yeah, I'll go first. So when in doubt, the UAS Support Center is awesome. And they are Uniform Alpha Sierra Help at FAA.gov. And they can help you. They can coach you on your waiver application. They can tell you where your waiver application is in the queue, the status of it, those kinds of things. They're wonderful folks, and they're super helpful. And when in doubt, reach out to them. And if you're public safety, identify yourself to them as public safety and ask them for the public safety toolkit. And they will send you a lot of information. And I'm going to, while I've got the mic here, I'm going to ask all of you who are in attendance, you're the true believers. And one of the things we're doing at the FAA that we didn't really talk about is we have a program called the Drone Pro program. And these are non-FAA people who assist our FAST team program managers to get the word out, spread the gospel, spread the, to evangelize aviation safety. And if you know people who are particularly, the true believers in aviation safety who are very knowledgeable, the local FSDO FAST team program manager would probably like to talk to you if you're interested in becoming an FAA Drone Pro, we call them. They're not FAA people, but they work with the FAA. So, Mike, you got anything to add?
No, I think that's really important. I mean, and he is right. You guys, this is a tough crowd for us because we're used to talking to people that don't know anything about drones.
Right.
And you guys know more than we know. So
Yeah.
It's always tough for us. But, and then you were asking about the college initiative. Is that what you were?
Yeah.
Sean? So if you're interested in that, if you're from a college, and I know we've done some colleges already in North Carolina. I know we did Elizabeth City State University, and then a couple other ones. I can't remember from North Carolina. But if you're interested in that, let me know. The woman who works that program and the two ladies who work that program both work in our office, and I'm happy to connect you with them. One is Diana Robinson, and the other one is Elena George.
Yeah, and they're great people. Really fun to work with.
So you have the US help at FAA.gov. John and Mike, if you want to drop your email addresses also, that way folks can reach out to you. Lastly, I want to mention about, so first thing I'll mention about Market Scale. They helped us put the session before, so we thank them and the way they organized everything. But last but not least, we have to thank Drone Life. They have been a valuable partner for all our education initiative. Miriam has been an excellent resource to get information and to pass information. And most recently, I thought about writing an article, and I thought about posting it. But then I talked to Miriam and said, can this article be posted on Drone Life? She reviewed it and she accepted it. So, this says that, it's our info, what we are thinking about the industry and what information we have can be a valuable resource to everyone else. So reach out to Miriam. Miriam, if you can drop your email address, they can reach out to you.
It's incredibly valuable. Sorry, my email address is easy. It's Miriam@DroneLife, and it's on the bottom of all of my articles. So
yes,
go to
and if you haven't read articles, then you have missed out. Yeah, if you have not read articles, that means you don't have your Part 107. So then
I have a question. I have a question for all of you. And true or false? Rec flyers need only notify an airport within 5 nautical miles before they go fly their drone. True or false? Not for you, Darshan, but everybody.
Anyone?
The answer is false. That changed in 2018, but we're still having a lot of challenges communicating that message out there to the public. They're still not really getting that. And here's another one. A Mavic Mini weighing less than a half a pound. If you fly it under Part 107, does it need to be registered? True or false? Yes, it does. All drones, irrespective of weight.
You send me an email of the top things you wish people knew, and I will write an article telling them.
Awesome.
I'm not kidding. I really will. That would be a great article.
That's awesome.
No, so that's what this is what it says, that we had these type of discussions are really useful. So so follow Drone Life. Make sure that we'll have the recording, but Drone Life will be covering. Miriam will be covering this session and what information came out. So if you want to see it in a short description, you'll see it right there. But we'll be coming soon with some other initiatives. We are trying to push together something for the Drone Safety Awareness Week, which is in November. If you're not aware about it, FAA last year started with the FAA's Drone Safety Awareness Week. It's a whole week of safety awareness initiatives, and we are trying to put together something on our side also. So stay tuned. We're trying to bring other chapters together and make it a big event, a whole week. And as always, we try to get you the best information. Any last words, Riley?
No, sir. Just again, thank you to our presenters for taking the time on a Friday evening. We greatly appreciate that, and all of our followers, thank you for participating today.
Have a nice day, everyone. John and Mike, thank you again. And if you need to reach out to them, it's Irishman1@fa.gov and Irishman2@fa.gov. So do make sure you reach out to them.
They're trying to keep up the good work.
Take care, everyone. Have a nice day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.